You're stuck in traffic, heart racing, blood pressure through the roof. You finally reach the office. The awkward hellos, revolving doors, your first caffeine fix of the day, and then back in the car. 15 minutes later, you're home, where the real work happens. Going home before the workday even starts? It's happening all over the world, and it's driving some of the richest bosses crazy. Why? And does it mean the office as we know it is dying? I'm Josh, and on today's episode of the Infographic Show, we're asking, what is the future of working from home? There's a phenomenon known as coffee badging. It mostly shows up in technical and professional roles, jobs where people are expected to come into the office. In the US in 2023, that meant about 70 million, roughly 44% of the entire workforce. So, a lot of people. The short story is that coffee badging is a long-lasting side effect of the global pandemic. It's about showing your face and flashing your badge to your boss or to the admin, and it looks like you're at the office all day. But really, you're back home doing exactly the same work you would be doing if you were just stuck in a cubicle. For the person doing the hustle, no harm's been done. They'll say they're just as productive working in their SpongeBob underwear as they are in a shirt and pants. So what's the problem? Bosses versus workers, the battle for the office. The truth is, many of the world's biggest business owners just aren't on board. Statistically, no one who works behind a desk these days wants to be stuck in the office 5 days a week. A 2024 poll by the remote job website FlexJobs found that 51% of respondents said ideally they'd want to be fully remote. They want to avoid the office completely. 46% of the other respondents said that they'd prefer a hybrid model, a little bit of office, but 2 or 3 days working from home. An estimated 100 million workers globally work this hybrid model right now. But will it become the norm? Statistics show barely anyone these days wants to be chained to a desk. According to the Future Forum Pulse survey, only 7% of employees who responded wanted to be at the office all week long. What happened? People weren't like this 10 or 20 years ago. As we said, it was the pandemic. It rewired our brains. We think differently, on average, about work. A Gallup poll of about 400,000 American office workers from 2019 to 2025 showed that the number of people who actually have a best friend at work has severely declined. It's gone from 22% in 2019 to 17% for hybrid workers. It's leading to an isolating disconnect in company culture. Fewer corporate staff right now believe in the mission of the company than they did in the past, especially younger people. Rates of anxiety and depression at work have also increased. They spiked during the lockdown period, but have remained higher than in the relatively halcyon pre-pandemic era. Workers just aren't as satisfied as they used to be. Maybe working from home will solve the problem. It's complicated. Some argue the exact opposite, saying workers would actually be more satisfied if they spent more time with their colleagues. That's what many of the older bosses believe. When it comes to coffee badging, they aren't exactly thrilled about their staff hustling them. At worst, it can look like wage fraud, and no matter how you slice it, it is a clear breach of company policy. It's not just a handful of rogue employees. Coffee badging is huge. When a LinkedIn poll asked nearly 1,500 workers if they'd ever done it, 19% said they or their colleagues are habitual offenders. Another 31% said they'd done it at least once. In another survey, this time of 2,000 Americans, 44% admitted to the occasional coffee badging in 2024. That was down from 58% the year before. Why the change? Well, it's not usually a fireable offense, but companies are sick of it and they're cracking down with the corporate whip. A survey in 2025 by Resume Templates of 849 managers said that 47% of their firms said that they will start firing people or at least take disciplinary action against them if they don't comply with their return to office or RTO orders. For staff, there's a kind of safety in numbers. If everyone breaks the rules, you've got a revolution on your hands. Companies can't fire everyone, but not everyone does it. And a lot of companies right now actually want masses of their staff to resign. You heard that right. Some companies have admitted they've introduced RTO to get rid of the weak links. The people they've determined are the company riffraff. It's called quiet firing, and it's all about making work so miserable that you quit on your own. Sure, it is kind of unethical, but firing people can be stressful and costly. Quiet firing is from a cheap man's playbook. It's something a lot of businesses do. In a 2025 survey, a massive 53% of firms admitted to quiet firing tactics. Staff wanting to work remotely was a major reason. The bosses think they're smart, but it's backfired for some. According to a study of around 3 million professionals, the recent RTOs have led to a 14% increase in turnover, with women leaving at a 20% rate. Some of the most senior staff, managers, mentors, innovators, and generally people with the most formidable skills left at an increased rate of 18 to 19%. While RTOs and quiet firing might have weeded out some of the less dedicated employees, the real tsunami of departures has also swept away the true diamonds in the rough. That is a lot of risk. So why do the bosses care so much about you being in the office? The answer is not all of them do. It might depend on how deep their eye wrinkles are or if they've developed jowls. According to the National Bureau of Economic Research, jowlless millennial and Gen Z bosses are much more likely to allow their staff to work remotely than their haggard boomer or even Gen X counterparts. In a 2025 survey of 8,000 U.S. workers aged between 20 to 64, the picture became very clear. Younger firms run by younger bosses do a lot more work from home than older companies. Since the bosses of the near future will all be millennial and Gen Z, does that mean that we'll all be working remotely a decade from now? Maybe, maybe not. People change when they get older. They might become like Mr. Jeffrey Preston Bezos, age 62, a boomer. Boomer Jeff is one of the biggest employers in the world and was a stickler for monitoring his staff. When Amazon isn't surveilling employees' productive capacity at its fulfillment centers, it's introducing employee performance management practices. In 2024, Amazon unleashed tracking policies that will tell managers how their corporate staff are moving about in physical locations. Staff themselves now have individual attendance records, a badge report on an internal HR dashboard. For home-loving Amazonians, that means one thing: goodbye coffee badging. The company recently fired about 14,000 corporate staff for many different reasons, but there's still another 350,000 or so left. They were all ordered back under the new RTO policy. It's now a case of 5 days a week in the office for most, or being put out to pasture. Managers were told to terminate anyone defying the mandate. It's Amazon's way or the highway. 30,000 employees have signed a petition against the order, but this could just be a convenient way to offload the perceived slackers. The president and CEO of Amazon, Andy Jassy, explained that getting people back to the office is all about productivity and culture, which go hand in hand. You can't have a culture if you don't have any constituent parts in the same place. Amazon says when staff are together in the office, it brings more energy, connection, and collaboration. Was he right? An Amazon employee didn't think so. Writing on an internal message board, they said that the only thing that should matter is metrics. If the bottom line is healthy, why should it matter where you choose to work? Companies care about profits, not connections. But do you need one to achieve the other? The staff says no. Jeff and Jassy disagree. Something similar happened at Samsung. After it initiated a 5-day RTO policy in 2025, it reported to the media that the hallways of its offices were full of smiling, happy people. Everyone was having a ball, which is probably why the company later reported that it had introduced a compliance tool for managers that would be able to monitor all office staff. This would make sure their employees were meeting their commitments and not coffee badging. The media has talked about a silent revolt at these big firms. RTO has gone down like a glass of sour milk. It was the same at Google. Most of its 120 to 140,000 US-based corporate staff didn't take kindly to being ordered back into the office. 58% of those staff are between 20 and 30, the age group that is mostly against RTO. "We don't like being micromanaged like school kids," wrote a staff member who was told his remote days were over. Google said anyone who disagreed with RTO was clearly not on board with the company values and strategy. Get in line or leave. This has been happening all over the corporate world. In a study, 93% of business leaders said they believe that office-bound staff members are better for the company than full-time workplace fugitives. Some have been flexible, though, asking for only 3 days in the office. Some staff members have said that is 3 days too many, and the same study said 8 in 10 companies said they have lost talent due to their RTO policies, but they're not backing down. Like the Paramount CEO Dave Ellison, they believe that without the office, you can't run a firm. Working from home or in the office pretending to be busy? Take a quick break and make sure to like, share, and subscribe. We won't tell your boss. In the same study, 41% of workers who had been given an RTO order said that they would start looking for other work. 14% said they were already on their way out. Goodbye, Google. Adios, Amazon. They just didn't care. It was like an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object. But why? People have now tasted remote work and they really don't want to go back to 5 days in the office. Some are young. Remote is how they started. No pandemic, no problem. But it happened and life changed, maybe forever. Staff have complained that RTO is toxic. They're not happy how they're being treated. Morale is low. It's so low that there's another new phenomenon. It's called revenge RTO. Staff are now embroiled in a passive-aggressive revolt. You've already heard about quiet firing. Well, these revolutionaries are now quiet quitting. They're taking long lunch breaks, leaving early, and doing the least amount of work they can get away with. They know they'll get fired sooner or later, but so what? It's like a corporate petty squabble that keeps escalating. It's a large part of the workforce, too. Forbes cited a survey that said 28% of respondents said they'd expect quiet quitting to happen where they work in 2025. It was called the top career trend that year. And experts said revenge RTO is becoming the norm as the oppressive in-office mandates take hold all over corporate America. From the staff's perspective, their bosses just don't seem to care about their well-being. Everyone is burned out. People are depressed. The big question is, have they had it too easy? There's a theory in economics that says when people earn enough to live comfortably, they might choose more leisure instead of working harder. In other words, once survival is guaranteed, motivation can wane. That's one of the arguments, one that says Gen Z is over-entitled. In a survey of 625 U.S. hiring managers, 45% said Gen Z was the hardest generation to work with. An article in the Wall Street Journal by Susie Welch caused a firestorm when she said Gen Z wasn't just difficult, but unemployable. The criticism is widespread and not just in the U.S. Entitled, lazy, spoiled, unreliable, petulant, oversensitive, delusional, even narcissistic. The insults kept on coming from almost all corners of the corporate world. According to the critics, the reason Gen Z doesn't want to work at the office is solely down to those negative traits. Gen Z might disagree. Fair or not, many companies now face a corporate catch-22. Employees don't want to come to the office, while managers argue productivity and collaboration decline if they don't. Neither side is willing to budge. There is seemingly no solution. Or is there? Productivity, happiness, and the cost of work. If the bottom line isn't affected, then the RTO enforcers are clearly just being petty. Ask a freelancer if they got more done working in an office for a wage or when they were paid piece rates. There's usually only one answer. In a study conducted in 2004, people working piece rates were 20% more productive than people on fixed wages. It wasn't office work, but the principle is the same. What does the increased output tell us about productivity? People are capable of much more if they're incentivized. You need teamwork for most big firms, and in many jobs it's hard to measure performance, so you can't make everyone freelance. Workers want predictable wages too, but you can still offer incentives. Some companies are doing that. 20% of firms in a survey said they would pay their office staff more than their hybrid staff. 76% said the pay would be the same, and only 4% said remote staff would get more. Conversely, in other studies, employees said that they'd take a pay cut of between 5 to 25% just to work remotely. Back to the big question, does remote work make people less productive? If it does, and the bottom line is negatively affected, bosses have every right not to allow it. The answer is, it's complicated. A recent study found that remote work led to a 10% reduction in productivity compared to on-site work. This was research conducted by the Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research, and it was backed up by another research paper by the National Bureau of Economic Research. Its findings must have given CEOs nightmares. It suggested that remote workers were a huge 18% less productive than office workers. But, and this is important, the research also showed that people who preferred working from home were generally less productive than those who preferred working in the office. Maybe the boomer and millennial RTO purists have a point, but not so fast. One of the largest studies on hybrid work showed some very different results. When the multinational Chinese technology company Trip.com ran a trial of almost 1,600 professional employees, people working remotely were as good as anyone else overall. 395 managers and around 1,200 non-managers took part, from engineers to staff working in the finance and marketing departments. They were all chosen randomly based on their date of birth. In the trial held in 2021 and 2022, some worked full-time in the office and others did 2 days a week at home. While this study was done in China, not the West, the jobs in the company were very similar to what you'd find in Silicon Valley. One of the more shocking revelations was that quit rates for remote workers dropped by 35%. There was also massively improved job satisfaction for the hybrid crew. And bigger still, there was no difference in performance ratings and promotions. The hybrids worked just as well as the non-hybrids. Productivity was reported as being maintained or even slightly better. The upshot was that many of the managers at the company were said to have changed their outlook on the effect of hybrid working and productivity. But each company is unique. They have their own culture, products, and tasks. So the hybrid model would have to be tested to see if it works. The studies saying remote work is either good or bad for companies need to take variation into account. Likely productivity will just stay the same. That's what the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco said in 2024. After conducting a study with various companies, it concluded that for some firms, quote, remote work neither hindered nor helped raise aggregate productivity growth. It's also about the individual. Some people work better alone than others. But at a company, it's unfair to treat people differently if they perform the same roles. If the company did, it could face discrimination lawsuits. Another thing to think about is remote staff can actually be beneficial to a company's costs. Firms will save on electricity bills, equipment, water, and food. If you have hundreds or even thousands of staff, those bills can quickly rack up. According to Global Workplace Analytics, U.S. companies collectively could save over $500 billion, more than $11,000 per employee, a year on reduced costs of real estate, utilities, and turnover of staff who leave because of inflexibility. And it's good for the environment, too. An article in the Cornell Chronicle said working from home 2 to 4 days a week could lower an employee's carbon footprint by 11% to 29%. The future of work, hybrid, AI, and creativity. But if there was one factor that ran throughout all the studies, it was this: working from home either a few days a week or all the time improved job satisfaction. It's not hard to understand why when you look at research in the 2020s. The average yearly cost of commuting in the USA was just under $8,500. It's also a lot of time given that people on average commute 239 hours a year. They also spend money on food and snacks, items that might be a part of the groceries at home. Forbes cited data that found U.S. workers spend on average of $50 per day when they go to the office. That is $1,000 a month if they work full-time. As for cars and parking costs, 76% of Americans drive to work, another 9 to 11% carpool, while roughly 4% use public transport. In New York, it's more like 55%, the most in America, followed by Washington, D.C. at 37%. Many New Yorkers pay $132 for a 30-day Metro card. But it's also about well-being. A study said 40% of Americans would prefer to clean their toilet over commuting. The stress of driving to work for years on end, say in LA, is possibly stressful enough to lower your life expectancy. Happiness matters, stress matters. Research by Oxford University in 2023 showed that there was, quote, a casual link between happy workers and a 13% increase in productivity. CEOs, take note. Gallup's 2023 State of the Workplace report said that unhappiness at work costs companies around the world $8.8 trillion in lost productivity. That's about 9% of global GDP. People become disengaged. They stop wanting to impress their bosses. They work badly and then eventually they just quit. Simply put, working from home makes people more content. There is more data to prove it. A global survey led by Cisco, comprising 28,000 full-time employees, revealed that having the ability to work from home made 82% of workers happier. But let's ask a serious question now. Are you really happier working from home, or is your brain just telling you that? Because there is a downside to working remotely. Anyone who's done it a lot will likely admit it. Great relationships can be forged in the office. You can make friends for life. Some research says we might spend close to 81,400 hours of our lives on average at work. Spending all that time alone instead means that we could become a lot more isolated. Gen Z doesn't need more isolation. Countless studies say they are, on average, less sociable than generations that came before. Statistically, they suffer from more social anxiety. They go out less, they party less, and they have less sex. Many have grown up addicted to devices, which can be absolutely catastrophic for mental well-being. Sometimes it feels easier to be alone. There's less risk, less effort, but we all know that making the effort can greatly improve your life. The people you meet at work can transform your existence. It's all about getting out of your comfort zone. Spending all of your workdays alone in front of a laptop might make you feel happier in the short term, but it'll very likely worsen your state of anxious isolation. In the realm of positive psychology, a good workplace culture can give your life meaning and purpose. You have a shared sense of belonging. Team building can help with your confidence. Pecking orders, while sometimes negative, might teach you how to be resilient, how to navigate through difficult storms. It's all about personal growth. If a company has a positive work culture, it helps with that growth, but it also boosts morale. Engaged workers statistically take fewer sick days. They also statistically stick around longer if they have colleagues they admire or at least get along with. As a team, they come up with more ideas. In short, your happiness in their culture is very important to you, and it's also good for your company's bottom line. Yes, this contradicts all those people quietly quitting and leaving because of RTOs. The onus then is on the companies to make going to the office a positive experience. If it isn't, that's on them. The last thing a company needs is a high turnover. Staff leaving all the time can get expensive. Training new staff takes time, and if they don't stick around, it sends a clear message to customers and clients: your company probably isn't doing so well. In the future, companies will likely find a balance, creating a pleasant office culture while still letting staff work from home some of the time. CEOs and managers might discover that asking for 5 days, like many companies are doing right now, is too much. Staff might go where they can work just 3. Hybrid is surely the future. But that's the near future. What about 25 years from now? According to the Global Survey of Working Arrangements, which looked at college-educated full-time workers in 22 countries, people worked an average of 1.6 days per week at home in 2022. That dropped to 1.33 days in 2023, and then to 1.27 days in 2024 to 25. But importantly, that is still far more than before COVID. That same study said English-speaking economies had more work-from-home days on average, from 1.5 to 2 days per week. That's compared to 0.5 to 1 day in the Asian nations that were studied. Europe seems to be the most flexible. In the Netherlands, Ireland, Finland, and Germany, a massive 69 to 77% of corporate staff at least work some of the time at home. Cyprus, Greece, Croatia, and Portugal were the lowest. The US at 26% of workers being fully remote and 52% working the hybrid model is also quite flexible overall. Companies of the future will have to adapt. There's also a good chance they'll adopt a 4-day working week. Iceland has tried it and reported an overwhelming success. Productivity wasn't diminished. A number of companies around the world, some in the UK and Japan, are also running trials of a shorter work week. Reports so far are mixed. Kickstarter said staff just had to fit more work into 32 hours. The mobility company Bolt said productivity actually increased. So, the future will likely be hybrid and maybe a 4-day week. The bigger question is, when AI systems get more advanced, will work become so easy that we can just sit back and let the robots handle all the hard stuff? Could the working week shrink to just 10 or 20 hours? The answer is almost certainly no. We're more likely to simply be expected to produce more stuff. Companies are competitive by nature. They're under constant pressure from investors to extract as much productivity as possible from their workers. That's a fact of life even if they don't have investors. History shows us technology rarely gives workers more free time. Since World War II, productivity in advanced economies has multiplied several times over, yet the standard work week hasn't fallen much below 40 hours. For a real-world example, a recent study by MIT and Stanford found that customer service workers using generative AI became about 14% more productive, but companies didn't use the technology to give them longer breaks. They just expected them to handle more work. In other words, if AI cuts your workload by half, you probably won't spend the rest of your afternoon at the beach. You'll just be expected to do twice as much. The artificial intelligence revolution may mean that computers and other devices become the new factories and mills. The Harvard Business Review recently said just that. AI is making work much more intense. It's likely the Gen Z, Alpha, and Beta bosses of the future will embrace better working conditions for staff. Labor rights haven't gone backwards so far, and that's mainly because of activism. The industries of the past actually fought to keep child labor and grueling shifts, but things change from generation to generation, and as you've seen, Gen Z wants people to enjoy their work more. They've been criticized for entitlement, but labor activism has been great for humanity in the past. When they're the bosses in 2050, they'll likely provide the comfort that they once demanded for their own staff. But is a total workless future even possible? It's true that machines are going to become incredibly sophisticated. Many jobs will go, certainly jobs that don't require a human touch or a kind word. But what about creatives? Will there still be writers who tell you stories and animators who bring them to life? Will there be narrators who are music to your ears? What about an editor to tell you the pacing is off, or if you've exhausted a point, like maybe right now? Actually, it's highly probable that creative work will greatly expand for humans, just as we have already seen on platforms like YouTube, TikTok, and Substack. The creator economy barely existed 20 years ago. Now, just about everyone wants to become a creator. It was worth around $250 billion in 2024, and some estimates suggest it could reach $500 billion by 2027. 2050? Maybe almost everyone will be creating or helping create some form of content to earn their future crust. Now, you're thinking, surely AI will take some creative jobs away. That's what some people have been saying. Not necessarily. Some researchers believe that as AI-generated content becomes more common, audiences will get tired of it and crave authentic human voices much more than now. The World Economic Forum has argued that in the future, skills like creativity, originality, and emotional intelligence will become more important, not less. People will crave a voice in the message, something that feels human, feels real, authentic. AI will help with creations, but it won't take over completely. The consumer may become more sophisticated too. When audiences are flooded with algorithmically optimized content, they'll probably learn to recognize the tricks. We're already seeing this with complaints about AI slop online or streaming shows that feel engineered purely to trigger dopamine hits. When everything feels manufactured for engagement metrics, people will want something less generic. Let's face it, if AI optimizes everything to sound and look the same and everyone can use that software, consumers will demand something different. They'll want unoptimized creations. Right now, this is being called the authenticity premium. It'll very likely be more important as we head into the future. And that's where you come in, the future creators. In 2050, your imperfect authenticity could be like gold dust if you know how to release it. It's not an original prediction either. People have been saying it for decades, even centuries. People like the economist John Maynard Keynes, or Karl Marx, or Bertrand Russell predicted machines would eventually do all the hard work. They said people might only work maybe 6 to 15 hours a week. They could spend the rest of their time pursuing creativity, philosophy, art, and leisure. They were a little optimistic. But maybe we just haven't got there yet. Maybe it's still coming, when people like you guys are the creators in the next 20 to 50 years. In a world of AI, our humanity may become our most valuable commodity. There's another possibility, the dystopian one, where there's mass unemployment and extreme inequality like never before. That is a long story, but the simple fact is, social chaos is not good for wealthy people's business, so it's unlikely the world will spin out into a giant mass of jobless gloom. At least we hope not. Even if AI actually creates a world of abundance, there will still be competition, status, and hierarchy. Human societies have always had this. We are not equal. We never have been. We will strive in the future because that is what evolution demands. Even in a world where basic needs are easily met, we still compete for recognition, influence, and prestige. But we might take better care of those who cannot work or get left behind. And speaking of how the workplace evolves and who gets left behind, check out why companies are firing Gen Z workers. To see how these dynamics are playing out today, or click on this video instead.